Room 13 by Robert Swindells, Chapter 21. Nobody called Ellie Mae's parents or took her home. The word was that she was a little better and might even be with them on the coach to Robin Hood's Bay the following day. Fliss wasn't fooled. At 10 o'clock she was lying on her back, staring at the wire mesh under Marie's mattress, waiting for 11:30. Her hands were folded across her chest, and under them was the pebble from Saltwick Bay. She felt its weight when she breathed, and her fingers caressed its perfect, smoothing smoothness. She was tired, not from swimming. Neither she nor the other three had swum, but from the exertions of the day and a sleepless night before. The swimming must have finished off Marie and the twins, because they were zonked out already. She listened to their breathing and wondered if she could stay awake. She didn't. Not completely. At least twice she drifted off and woke with a start, thinking she'd missed the witching hour, but there would be no such luck. When the town clock chimed for 11:30, she was wide awake and scared. This time she got to the bathroom first. Trot and Gary came nearly straight away, but it was 19 minutes to 12 when the door of room 11 opened and Lisa slipped out. "Sorry I'm late," she whispered. "I fell asleep." "It's okay," Fliss told her. "I fell asleep too, twice." "I was spark out," admitted Trot. "This div had to shake me like a madman to wake me up." He looked at Gary. "Didn't you, Gaz?" Gary nodded. "You should have got yourself a stick of rock like mine. I sucked that from 10 o'clock and didn't nod off once." "Dirty pig," shuddered Lisa. "I don't know how you can." Gary grinned. "You should see it. It's getting a really good point on it now." "Tell you what I do want to see tonight," said Fliss. "I want to see how the 13 gets on that door. I want to be watching when the clock starts striking midnight. See the exact moment that number appears." "Yeah," Trot nodded. "Good idea. Let's do that." "I brought my torch," said Lisa. "We can shine it on the door, right where the number will be. We'll see really clearly then." They waited. Gary, sitting on the rim of the bath, looked at his watch every few seconds. Fliss went to the hand basin, ran a trickle of cold water into her cupped hand and sucked it up, watching herself in the mirror. Trot stood by the window, gazing out. The patterned lamp splintered the light from a street lamp. Lisa leaned on the wall by the door, switching her torch on and off. After a while, Fliss whispered, "Maybe she won't come." "It's only 5 to," Gary told her. "Plenty of time yet." He hoped Fliss was right. When his watch told him it was a minute to midnight, Gary got up and went over to the door. The others joined him, jostling quietly till they could all see, and Lisa was at the front with her torch. 13 seconds, he hissed, and began counting down. At 15 seconds, Lisa switched on and steadied the disc of light on the right spot. It was not spectacular, as Gary whispered 0. They heard the town clock chime, then strike. At about the 4th stroke they noticed a small, shapeless mark on the door, and Lisa moved the torch slightly to get it in the centre of her beam. It was like a stain lighter than the surrounding woodwork. As stroke followed stroke, the stain seemed to shrink and become paler, and then to divide, becoming 2 whitish blobs whose shapes altered until by the 12th stroke they formed the figures 1 and 3. As the echo died, they heard a door close somewhere below. "I think she's coming," warned Fliss. "Switch the torch off, Lisa." She did so, plunging the landing into darkness. They withdrew and half closed the door again. "Did you see that?" breathed Trot. "It just came out of nowhere. I can't believe it." Fliss snorted. "You've got to believe it, you div. You saw it. The point is, what do we do when Ellie Mae gets here?" "We stop her," hissed Gary. "By force if we have to. We agreed." "OK, but which of us actually goes out there and grabs her? Or do we all go?" Lisa shook her head. "We can't all go. It'd scare her to death." "It should be a girl, Fliss, you or me. But I think we should try calling her first, from here." "Shh!" Trot pressed a finger to his lips. "She's here." They looked out. Ellie Mae was standing on the top step, looking at the door to room 13. She hesitated for a moment, then moved forward. Lisa nudged Fliss. "You or me?" "Me." As Ellie Mae drew level with the bathroom, Fliss cupped her mouth with her hands and hissed, "Ellie Mae!" The girl didn't turn or pause, but continued walking slowly towards the cupboard, using a full voice this time. Fliss called out, "Ellie Mae, over here!" It made no difference. The girl was standing before the door now, reaching for the knob. Fliss felt a push in the small of her back, and Lisa hissed, "Go on, for heaven's sake, before she opens that door." She left the bathroom and moved across the landing, approaching Ellie Mae from the rear. As the girl's hand closed round the knob, Fliss took a gentle grip on her shoulder and said, "Ellie Mae, you don't want to go in there." She felt the thin shoulder stiffen under her hand. Ellie Mae's head turned slowly, and Fliss found herself gazing into eyes which were dead as a shark's. The girl's lips twitched. "Let go of me," she hissed. "Leave me alone." "Ellie Mae!" Fliss swung around and held her by both shoulders. "Listen, we're trying to help you. If you go in that room, you'll die." Ellie Mae snarled, shaking her head. Never die. Never. You. Not me. She tore herself from Fliss's grip and turned, scrabbling for the doorknob. Gary! Cried Fliss. Lisa! Quick! I can't hold her! There was a scampering of bare feet on the carpet, and they were with her, the three of them. Hands reached out, snatching fistfuls of Ellie Mae's clothing, circling her wrists. She hissed and fought, amazingly strong, free in one hand to twist the doorknob and push. The door swung inward. Fliss, one arm crooked round Ellie Mae's neck, glanced inside and saw not a cupboard, but the room of her dream. There was the table with a long, pale box upon it, and beyond a small curtained window, a window which wasn't there in the daytime, the eye that sleeps by the day. She dug her heels into the carpet, threw her weight backwards, and fell with Ellie Mae on top of her. Quick, one of you, close that door! She flung both arms around Ellie Mae's waist and held on as the girl buckled and writhed. Lisa dropped to her knees, grabbed Ellie Mae's legs, and heard the door slam. And then the boys were there, catching the girl's wildly flailing arms. Ellie Mae fought on for a moment, but they were too many for her. Fliss felt the thin body go limp, and the girl began to cry. When they let go of her, she lay curled on her side with a thumb in her mouth, moaning softly. They got up and stood looking down at her. What do we do now? Asked Lisa. As she spoke, they heard voices below and footsteps on the stair. It won't be up to us, said Gary. Here comes the cavalry. Chapter 22. What on earth's going on here? The landing light came on, and there stood Mrs. Evans, unfamiliar in a quilted dressing gown and no make-up. She saw Ellie Mae on the floor and hurried forward, dropping on one knee beside her. We were, Fliss floundered, seeking words which might make their story credible, while the teacher lifted Ellie Mae's head onto her lap and checked with hands and eyes for damage. Mrs. Marriott appeared in a beige nightie, followed closely by Mr. Hepworth in maroon pyjamas. The door of room 10 opened and Marie's sleepy face peered out. Marie Nero, snapped Mr. Hepworth. Get back into bed now. The door closed. He looked at Ellie Mae, sobbing in Mrs. Evans's arms, then at Gary, then at Fliss. What's all this about, Felicity Morgan? What's happened to Ellie Mae? Sir, she came up again to go in the cupboard, only it's not a cupboard, look. She pointed, and then her heart sank. There was no number on the door. There was a number, sir. We all saw it. 13, and Ellie Mae opened it, and it opened inwards, and inside. She stopped. There was disbelief in the teacher's eyes and the hard glint of anger. She dashed across to the door, twisted the knob, and pushed. It was locked. She pulled, but the door didn't move. She turned, pointing. Look at Ellie Mae's neck, sir. Yes, look at it, said Mrs. Evans grimly. She tilted the girl's head to one side and lifted her hair. Ellie Mae's neck was bruised and scratched. She was fighting, miss, fighting to get in the room. We had to stop her, miss. That's enough. Mrs. Evans glared at Fliss. If Ellie Mae came up here of her own accord, then she was obviously walking in her sleep. It's quite common among young people, and all you had to do was come down and tell me or one of the other teachers. Instead, it seems to me that you woke her in a sudden, violent way and she panicked, as anybody would. You've been silly and irresponsible, and there's to be no more of it. Go to your beds, and in the morning I want to know what you, Gary Bazzard, and you, David Trotter, were doing up here on the girls' landing in the middle of the night. Ellie Mae was helped to her feet and taken away, supported by Mrs. Marriott on one side and Mrs. Evans on the other. Gary and Trot followed a grim-faced Mr. Hepworth downstairs, and Fliss and Lisa were left gazing at each other nonplussed. What can we do? Whispered Lisa, almost crying. Nobody believes us. Fliss sighed and shook her head. I don't know, Lisa. I'm too tired and fed up and scared to think. We'll talk in the morning. She crept into bed and jumped when Marie's voice came out of the darkness. What happened? Fliss sighed. Nothing, Marie. Nothing much, anyway. I'll tell you tomorrow, okay? Promise? Promise. Okay. She expected to lie awake till dawn, but she didn't. She had just time to wonder in a muzzy way what she was going to tell Marie before sleep rolled in like a black tide and bore her away.